Hi, welcome to Taking the Biz. In this video, we're going to take a look at a theory known as Porter's 5 forces, the second of Michael Porter's theories that appear on the A-level syllabus. Now, this theory is all about the nature of competition, or the forces of competition that are active in an industry or a marketplace. This theory's got two uses for organisations. When firms are thinking about new industries or new markets that they might break into, they can use Porter's 5 forces to assess who has power in this industry, who are the actors or the agents that are exercising or holding all of the power. And if a firm realises that if they moved into a new market, they might actually be quite powerless compared to some of the agents in that market, they might decide that perhaps they might use their resources elsewhere and not penetrate this industry. But if a firm's already active in an industry, again, it can use Porter's 5 forces to assess who holds the power balance inside this industry, and then the firm can start to try and develop strategies or tactics to try and make itself more powerful in relation to some of the other agents that are active. So let's talk you through the 5 kind of categories or sources of power that Porter described might be operational in a marketplace. The first agent that Porter talked about, perhaps having power over a business, is their suppliers. So he referred to this as supplier power, and different firms have different kind of relationships with their suppliers. Some are quite powerful compared to the firms that supply them. Strangely enough, some firms are quite reliant on their supplier, so their supplier holds the balance of power in that relationship. Porter said something similar is in operation when we talk about a business's customers, and refer to this as buyer power. Some businesses are in an incredibly powerful position compared to their customers that purchase from them, but in other relationships that power is reversed, and the buyer or the customer holds a lot of the power, and the firm is quite beholden to them. We could also talk about firms facing power threats from new entrants to the market. Now, some firms exist in marketplaces where it's incredibly difficult for new firms to set up and enter. In other markets, firms are a little bit more powerless there, and new firms could quite easily and quite simply set up and compete with our business. Perhaps the most natural kind of interpretation of competition is from our direct rivals in the marketplace. And Porter described how we can look at the relationships between us and our rivals and discuss the balance of power. So in some markets, a firm might find that they are very powerful compared to the other competitors in that industry. But some firms find themselves as the smaller player, the less dominant firm, and their rivals have got far more power than they have. Final category where Porter said that firms are facing competition and this power struggle, if you like, is actually from firms in other markets or other industries. It's what Porter referred to as the threat of substitutes. So businesses might find that as well as having to compete with their direct rivals, they're also in this power battle competing with firms in other industries whose products might be a substitute for what we're selling. So for example, a cinema chain is not just competing against other rival cinemas, but they're also competing against other leisure businesses who could take customers from us, and customers might choose, rather than go to the cinema, to do one of those other activities instead. So Porter said firms have got to try and identify how powerful they are and who holds the power or the balance of power in these 5 different relationships, and you can use it to decide whether a market might be appealing or attractive. And if you think that if you moved into a new market you would hold lots of power compared to these other agents, then that might mean that your business wants to try and penetrate that marketplace. But if you're already active in a market, you need to try and look at these relationships and these power balances and take action to try and put your firm in a more dominant or powerful position. Because according to Porter, if you hold power in these different relationships, then it can be advantageous to your business, and it can certainly help in terms of your profits. So let's go through some of these different relationships then and see how they might affect businesses' strategies and how they try and be competitive. If we start off with the suppliers first of all, suppliers are going to be very powerful over our organization. Firstly, if there's not many of them. The fewer suppliers there are in an industry, the more powerful each of them become. If we've got lots of different choices over our suppliers, or if it's very cheap for us to switch from one supplier to another, that makes us powerful and the suppliers more beholden to us. But when we have very few suppliers, perhaps even when there's only one supplier of a certain raw material or product or component that we're after, that gives them the balance of power in that relationship. Similarly, if a supplier is selling something that's particularly unique, so there might be other suppliers available, but we want that supplier because what they sell is unique, again, that gives them greater power over us. Now, there's a few different strategies that the businesses might look at in order to try and redress that power balance. First thing a firm can do is if they are quite weak compared to their suppliers, then they might try and sign joint ventures with those suppliers and work more closely with them, potentially even looking at things like mergers or some form of integration with that supplier. So suddenly if we merge with them, then that just redresses the power balance because they don't need to try and make profit out of us any longer. Another way we can try and redress the power balance if we feel that our suppliers are more powerful than us is through trying to maximize economies of scale. If suppliers are very powerful, then one of the things they might try and do is drive up prices, making it more costly for us to operate. One way we can try and negate that is to maximize economies of scale so that we are becoming a bigger customer for them, we're producing on a larger scale, we're placing larger orders, thus making us a little bit more attractive to them and giving us a little bit more power in that relationship. Another thing we can try and do if we feel like our suppliers are a little bit too powerful in our relationship with them is we can try and seek out new ones. Now that can be very difficult to do because there might not be other suppliers naturally available out there. But one little tactic that we could use is to try and look at other firms that maybe supply something similar. Maybe they produce something similar for a different industry, a different market, and we might be able to approach them and see whether they would be willing to start supplying us with a component, even though it's something that they haven't produced before. But it might be that we could sort of sign a deal or start working on a relationship with a supplier in another industry to start producing what we want. Suddenly then we're entering new suppliers into our marketplace and potentially into our supply chain. And so that's just going to redress the power balance that we have. Second thing we can look at is what influences the power balance when we're looking at the relationship between us and our buyers or our customers. And the first thing is how many potential customers we might have. If we're a small producer and we've just got one contract to supply a supermarket, then that supermarket is holding an awful lot of the power. They could quite easily switch to another supplier, but we have only got them as our sole customer, so they hold a lot of the power in that relationship. Buyers or customers are also very powerful when it's quite easy for them to switch from us to a rival firm. If we know that they could easily switch and choose somebody else, that gives them a lot of the bargaining chips and makes us a little bit less powerful. The other thing that makes a firm very, very powerful is the size of the orders that they're placing. If they place big, substantial orders with us, then that makes them very, very attractive and lucrative for us and gives them a lot of the power in their relationship with us. So again, there's things that businesses might try and weave into their strategies in order to deal with or redress the power balance with their customers. First thing they could do is to try and look for new customers. So that could be a new geographic market, so we're less reliant on the customers we have in our old market. Could even be through seeking out new market segments that our products might appeal to. And suddenly, once we've got a broader range of customers or segments that might buy our products, it means we're less reliant on our original customer base. And so that just redresses that power balance a little bit. Second thing we can do is to try and differentiate our products. So if we differentiate what we sell, we make it less easy for customers to switch from us to rival businesses, because now we're differentiated, we've got something more unique or something more attractive about us. It makes our customers a little bit more loyal to what we sell and just redresses that power balance. The other thing we could try and do to address that power balance with our customers is to try and drive rivals out of the marketplace. If customers have got a lot of choice, that gives them power over us. But we could use things like promotional tactics or even price wars to try and drive rivals out of the marketplace, and then suddenly there's fewer firms in the market, less choice for customers, and it makes us a little bit more powerful compared to them. If we have a look at the threat of new entrants, if new entrants can easily enter the marketplace, then that poses some dilemmas for us. If it's quite simple for new firms to join our marketplace, then they're going to be able to take profits away from us, take market share away from us, and obviously that means that we are left as a less powerful entity in this marketplace. So there are a few things that we might be able to do to try and make sure that that threat is minimized. And it all revolves around a concept known as barriers to entry. So barriers to entry are measures that might prevent or deter new firms from entering our marketplace. And as part of our strategies, we can try and erect greater barriers to entry to try and ward off new entrants to the market and reduce that threat in terms of the competitive forces that are active in the marketplace. So the kind of barriers to entry that firms might try and look at is firstly making sure that they've got patents or copyrights on technologies or processes or ideas in their business. And that just makes the costs for new firms that might want to enter the marketplace all that greater, and it just acts as a deterrent. Another thing we can try and do is again try and maximize the economies of scale that we are benefiting from. If we're benefiting from quite significant economies of scale, we can produce at cheaper unit costs, we can pass those cost savings on to customers in the form of lower prices. And that's just a deterrent to new entrants. If they look at how cheaply we're producing and selling to customers, they might look at that and think, oh, it's going to be very difficult for us to enter this market and be profitable. And so it just encourages them to turn their attentions elsewhere because we've erected greater barriers to entry. Another way we can do that is through our brand name and trying to generate greater brand loyalty to our organisation. If new entrants are looking at prospective markets and they see that customers in this market are existingly brand loyal to us as an organisation because we're offering something that they really value and so that they keep on purchasing our products, again, it just sends out that signal to new rivals that this isn't really a market that you want to try and enter, because we've already got this market tied up, we've got brand loyalty, so you probably want to spend your resources entering different marketplaces. If we have a look at our rivals, then this is where, as Porter said, firms can face a lot of intense competition. And there's power battles between rivals that leads to price wars and then competing to see who can have the most attractive promotions. And all of these either damage the profits of an organisation or they increase the costs of an organisation. So intense rivalry between different competing firms in an industry can be harmful to organisations. So what firms need to try and do is to make sure that they are the most powerful organisation in that industry so that the pressure on their profits and their costs is minimised. So the first thing you can do that is to have a look at Porter's other theory, which was his two generic strategies. If we're trying to be very, very powerful against our rivals and very, very competitive in our industry, we could go for Porter's low-cost producer strategy. We could try and compete with our rivals by being the lowest cost producer in that marketplace, passing those cost savings on to customers, setting prices that rivals can't get anywhere near, and so we will attract customers, and with customers comes power because we are the lowest cost firm in that marketplace. The other way we could do it is through Porter's other generic strategy, which is to differentiate ourselves. So if we want to try and gain some power over our rivals, we need to give ourselves a point of differentiation that our rivals simply cannot match, that they cannot compete with. And if we use those two generic strategies in markets against our rivals, it's going to increase the power that we have compared to those other organisations. And the final thing that we can look at is the threat provided by substitutes and how firms can try and minimise or try and guard against that. So remember, substitutes aren't direct competitors selling the same type of product in the markets that we are. They're other markets, rival markets that consumers might look at and substitute what we sell for what the firm in a different market is selling instead. So for example, we could be a manufacturer of confectionery and we might have other firms in our marketplace selling the same as us. But people can substitute the purchase of chocolate bars for other types of products if they wish. They might substitute them for other snacks like crisps or biscuits, but they might even substitute buying of a chocolate bar for the buying of a drink instead. So it brings us into competition with more organizations. Now, if we want to try and insulate ourselves from the threat of substitutes, first thing that we can do is to try and develop those strong brand names. If we've got a strong brand name, if customers trust, like, and are loyal to us, then they're less likely to want to switch from what we sell to a product in a rival marketplace. Another way we can try and insulate ourselves from the threat of substitutes is through promotions as well. If we can develop a promotional strategy that gives customers reasons to keep purchasing from us and keep coming back, then it just makes that power that rival substitutes have to take our customers, it just makes that power a little bit less. Final way that we can do that is just revert again to Porter's low-cost producer strategy. If we're a low-cost producer, if we're driving down costs and passing those cost savings on to customers in the form of lower prices, then again that gives them less motivation to be looking at what they could substitute the purchase of our good for. If we're good value, if we're offering them low prices, then why would they ever want to try and find a substitute for the good that we're selling? So there's Porter's strategy, really looking at 5 different aspects of power that are active in a marketplace and looking at how firms can try and develop strategies to reduce the power that their suppliers or buyers or new entrants or rivals or even substitute firms might have, and try to increase the power that we have in each of those relationships. Really key topic for our A-level exams. Hopefully that one sees you over the finishing line. We'll see you soon for some more Taking the Biz tutorials.